Hi everyone, welcome back to our unit on cinematography. Today I'm going to be talking about camera range. One of the decisions that a cinematographer needs to make when he or she is trying to fulfill the director's vision for the look of the film and kind of bring that story to life visually is where to place the camera in relation to the characters, in relation to the human subjects, or whatever it is that they're filming. And so that's what camera range is all about. So here is a list of vocabulary terms for this unit. Again, I would recommend that you write these down before we get started, and give yourself a few lines of space for each of these. Um, I give you definitions of each of these terms and a lot of visual examples to go along with them, but I also talk about why these shots are important, what they're sometimes used for, in terms of conveying certain types of emotional information. So you want to write that information down as well. Okay, yesterday we talked about the frame, and one of the questions I asked you to write about in your attendance tracker was the frame and how we understand the importance of the frame. And we talked about this image here, actually these two images here, um, and so I just kind of want to go. I want to review this quickly, because what we're talking about today, camera range, has a significant effect on the frame, and the frame is kind of the it is the boundary of what the filmmakers have to work with in order to tell their story visually. And so the basic principle here is that the closer the camera gets to the subject that it's filming, the less information, visual information, it will contain within the frame. Okay, so again, we talked yesterday about how the photographer here, Dorothy Lang, um, created a whole series of photographs, or you might even call these rough drafts of photographs. She started out further back from her human subjects here, and so the frame contains a lot more visual information: the sky, the trees, the dirt, the tent. We see all of these things, and the human subjects are kind of dwarfed in the center here. But eventually, she got very close. We get this great medium close-up shot of the mother and her two children, and we don't get all of the same visual information that surrounds them. We really cut out a lot of that visual noise, as it were, and so we can focus almost exclusively on the pained expression on the mother's face. We'll talk more about the effects of medium close-ups and close-ups in just a bit. Okay. So I'm not going to be going. I'm not going to be going in the same order in which you wrote those terms down, the vocab terms. I'm going to jump around just a little bit, mostly for effect. I have my reasons here, but eventually you'll fill in all of these terms, and it will kind of make sense when you're all done. So I want to start with the what's called the full shot, or it's sometimes referred to as the long shot. And this is a shot that we see oftentimes in musicals and action films. And with this shot, the human subject is entirely within the frame from top to bottom. So the person's head is toward the top of the frame, and their feet are towards the bottom of the frame. So in other words, the full shot kind of gets the entire height of the person just within the top and bottom boundaries of the frame. And the reason why this shot comes up a lot in musicals and action films is this, when we see characters singing and dancing, we want to see their full bodies moving. Same way with action films. We want to see the action. The action. Sometimes you do see action films, or action scenes, I should say, that use close-ups. We'll look at some of these later on, but oftentimes we get the full shot or the long shot for this, so we can see that choreography, and kind of get the full effect of that choreography there. Yesterday we watched a few scenes from this old 1903 film, The Great Train Robbery, and we talked about how each individual scene of that movie was a single shot, and that's because, of course, the camera was too big to move, and it could barely even tilt left to right. It could barely even pan, and so it was almost just like watching a series of kind of theatrical performances on a stage, captured by a camera. But another effect of that is that the camera couldn't move closer to the people. If they wanted to get a close up, the people would have to come to the camera. And so in early films like this, we don't get a lot of close ups. We get a lot of full shots. And that's simply an effect of the size and clunkiness of the camera. Okay, I'm going to jump to a much, much closer shot, or a much shorter camera range here. And I want to talk about the close-up shot. And I want to talk about this now because I want to contrast it with the full shot. So close-up shots are when the human subject's face fills the frame. Okay, we see their full face. Maybe the hair is cut off, maybe not. But forehead to chin, we get the character's full face in that shot. And I think the main use of the close-up shot, I think the reason why cinematographers use this, camera people use this, is to show the character's emotion. When we look at camera movement, we're going to take a look at what's called the push-in shot, where the camera maybe starts back at like a medium or medium long shot, and then moves in, literally pushes into the face of the subject. And when it does that, it actually brings the audience, brings us, the viewer, kind of closer to that person and to their emotional experience. And so the close-up shot is vital for conveying like an emotional reaction, or for emphasizing the emotion of the scene. Here's a famous "Here's Johnny" scene from The Shining, and Jack Nicholson's character's face peeking through the doorway that he's just smashed in with an axe. We see the crazed look on his face, and so we get his emotion, but we can also understand the emotional reaction of his wife in the very next shot. And we probably wouldn't have that same kind of feeling of fear and terror if this was shot from, say, a long shot, if we saw the entire door. Here's a couple more examples of the close-up shot. I mean, we could spend all day looking at examples of close-ups and talking about them, but I'm not going to belabor it because you kind of get the idea. Here in Psycho, we see in the face of the dying character of Marion Crane, we see their kind of final look of fear, almost kind of draining out of her as she dies. Spoiler, sorry, you haven't seen it yet. You probably know, though. Of course, here Hannibal Lecter's almost terrifyingly vacant expression here in the eyes. I mean, the eyes, the mouth. He's not smiling. He's not frowning. He doesn't look angry. But there's this is the look of somebody who has absolutely zero empathy. This is a psychotic killer, with basically who's basically morally bankrupt. And Anthony Hopkins, who portrays this character, does such a great job of rendering that through his facial expressions, and the close-up shot is, I think, just necessary for helping the audience to feel that and to really be afraid of his character. All right, back to this. This is probably the last time that we'll talk about this, but again, you can see here how the close-up shot and the full shot produce very different effects. Over here on the left, we might say that this is a full shot, maybe a little bit further than a typical full shot, but we get our human subjects from top to bottom fully within the frame, and then some. But again, we can barely see their faces, let alone make out facial expressions. And the purpose of this kind of photograph isn't to bring us closer, more intimate, in more intimate connection with the people and their emotional experiences. This shot, I would say, maybe does a great job of conveying their economic situation, their poverty. But over here on the right, the camera gets closer, it pushes in, if you will, to the face of the mother, and now we can connect with her on a very one-on-one kind of emotional level. We can see the wrinkles in her brow as she's staring off into into almost maybe to the horizon, hoping or worrying or whatever it may be. But if the photographer or the cinematographer wants us to experience or to understand or identify with the character's emotions, they're going to want to use a close-up and not a full shot. Okay, next one, medium long shot, also sometimes called the cowboy shot. We'll talk about why in just a minute. This is so if we're starting from a long shot and we're moving closer, we get the medium long shot next. This is where the character is framed. Kind of only 75% of the character is framed, usually from the shin or the knees or the thighs up. This is also often used in action scenes, if we have scenes involving, say, conversations or interactions with 2 or 3, or in this case 4.5 characters. This is a good shot to use as well. Again, it's a functional shot. We're not really focused on the emotions of the characters because we're not really focused on individuals. We're focused on several people involved in, say, a conversation or plot. So if you're just trying to convey plot, kind of move the story forward, medium long shots would work. So here's why we call this sometimes the cowboy shot. This is you see this shot in all types of Western films, from the classic Stagecoach to the more modern Cowboys and Aliens. I haven't really done a lot of research on this, so I'm not sure why this is so well liked by Western filmmakers. My guess is it has something to do with its ability to depict the cowboy in all of his or her cowboyness, right? You get the costumes, you get the guns. Here, you actually have an opportunity to show the conflict here. So we get the close-up of the hand on the pistol of his adversary, but we also get the protagonist here as well. So cowboy shot. And if any of you have any ideas on why this is so famous in Westerns, I'd love to hear them. You may be thinking, well, this isn't a Western, this is a superhero film. But here's the thing, and I'm not going to go into this in great detail right now. Westerns and superhero films are basically the same kind of story. Superheroes are essentially another type of cowboy. And cowboys are a type of superhero. They don't necessarily have superpowers like superheroes do, but they're vigilantes. They are anti-heroes in a way. Some of them are. They operate kind of outside of the law or above the law, but they serve the law. And so that's probably also why we see this cowboy shot used in superhero films too. Again, we get the full effect of the character with their costume. It's a great way to kind of show off costume while still allowing us to see the character's face, but also start to appreciate the action as well. Okay, moving in a little bit closer is the medium shot. This is where we frame the character from the waist up. As we're getting closer, we're cutting out more of the surrounding visual information, and so we're not, this isn't a great shot for focusing on several characters. So if we have 2 characters in a conversation, kind of like this one from Fight Club, medium shot works well. Again, the emphasis isn't as much on the emotions of individual characters, but maybe we want to focus on the emotions between the characters. If the 2 characters are having an argument or finally kind of breaking down the walls between them, we can see some emotion in their face, but we can get both of them in the frame at the same time. Okay, even closer Now we've got the medium close-up shot. And so here is where we begin to focus a lot more on emotions in our individual characters. It's a lot harder to get two characters in a medium close-up shot unless, of course, it's a romantic film. And there's a lot more intimacy between the characters, and they have to kind of come closer physically together in order to get this medium close-up shot of both of them. But again, the emphasis there would be on the emotional exchange between them, the love between them. Again, the medium close-up shot, like the close-up shot, cuts out a lot of the surrounding visual information. So the emphasis here is less on the character's setting and their environment, and more on them. Okay, we talked about the close-up, so I'm going to jump past that and go to the next one, which would be the extreme close-up. And so here, the subject's whole face basically fills the frame to the point where you can only see part of it. Oftentimes the eyes. Okay, usually it's the eyes. If an extreme close-up is being used, it's almost always, or I'd say more often than not, it's used to focus on their eyes. And the extreme close-up is just a great way to call attention to detail. And so in this case, the detail is the eyes, the emotion that comes through the eyes. So much emotion in humans comes through our eyes, and so viewers know that, and they can identify with that. And we see here in Magneto's eyes a kind of quiet rage and anger. And Magneto as a character kind of always is quietly seething with anger. And if you're familiar with the films and his story, you can understand why he's like that. But you can see that so well in the eyes here, thanks to the extreme close-up. A couple more examples of this. If you want to pause and linger on this, you can. Basically, it's the same effect in both of these shots here. Different emotions, but you get the idea. Sometimes, I know that I said that the extreme close-up is almost always used to focus on the eyes. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the mouth. Sometimes it's maybe another part of the body, or even just another object altogether. An interesting effect occurs when you move away from both eyes or the face itself and only focus on one eye or the mouth or the nose or something like that. It's a lot harder to experience the emotion or to identify with the emotion. This, of course, these are two shots, extreme close-up shots from the famous shower sequence in Psycho. We'll probably watch that shower sequence later on when we talk about editing. But there's a wide range of shots used in that sequence, and a lot of extreme close-ups here. Of course, the mouth as she's screaming. This is emphasizing her terror, but the way that the camera kind of, I should say the scene kind of cuts so quickly from eyes to mouth to the knife to the water to everything. We as viewers become really disoriented, and it's a really disorienting scene. It's a chaotic scene, and so again, like we talked about yesterday, the cinematographer is working with the director to try to create images that convey the tone of the scene or of the film, and so a character getting murdered in the shower is a terrifying and chaotic moment, and should feel that way and should look that way. And so the extreme close-ups here help to kind of distance us from the people and kind of make us feel a little bit unsettled. Just a quick comparison here. Of course, on the right is a close-up of Marion Crane's face. Here's an extreme close-up, kind of the same shot, but in this one we're just focused on her eye. Here, you can see emotion, right? You can see the kind of final terror as her face relaxes in death. But here, if you had to try to identify an emotion just based on this image of her eye, it'd be a lot harder to do. And that's because the extreme close-up When it only focuses on one eye, it's going to be a lot harder for audiences and viewers to read that expression. Okay, pulling back, way back, we get the extreme long shot. And the extreme long shot usually includes a human subject, but they're oftentimes very small, they're dwarfed. The emphasis here, I'd say the main purpose of the extreme long shot is to show the character in their surroundings. So when you have characters traveling great distances, as we do here with Gandalf, the extreme long shot is a great way to show them in the action of traveling, or maybe as we see here in this great shot from No Country for Old Men, our character who is hunting is very tiny in comparison to these bleak surroundings here, this kind of high desert setting, and so it helps to also emphasize his isolation, his tininess amidst a very unforgiving landscape. Back up just a little bit here. So the extreme long shot can establish setting. Again, it can emphasize the environment. So this is another shot that we see oftentimes in Westerns, because Westerns love to show the landscape. They love to show the open desert, Monument Valley, or the mountains in the background, right? And it can oftentimes suggest isolation, especially when it's a single character in a vast landscape, as we see here with a great opening shot from Mad Max Fury Road. Of course, our main character here standing by his beaten up vehicle, looking out at this post-apocalyptic landscape and a kind of ominous storm cloud in the distance that's foreshadowing here. And so we understand a lot about this character already. He's a loner. He travels by himself, and he's facing a really unforgiving, harsh environment, and that's going to get even more unforgiving and harsh when he meets the antagonists of the film. Okay, our final term for today is the establishing shot. And the establishing shot, this is, I have to say, of all the shots that we've looked at so far, this is probably the most functional. This, you could say, is an extreme long shot. It doesn't always include a human character, and I would say probably most often doesn't include any human characters. The establishing shot, and I also add that the establishing shot isn't so much a shot about camera range. It's not necessarily about proximity. It's more about the function that the shot plays in the story. The establishing shot is used to move us from one place to the next and to let us know that we're changing location. So for those of you who watch Friends, or maybe even if you're familiar with the old sitcom Seinfeld, you know that when we go from, say, in Friends, if we go from Central Perk, the coffee shop, to one of the Friends' apartment buildings, well, after the scene in the coffee shop, we're going to get an extreme long shot of the apartment building from the outside. Okay, and that's letting us know that we're changing locations. Okay, because if they just cut from the coffee shop to the interior of an apartment, that would be a little bit confusing for us. So we need that establishing shot to just kind of be grounded in the sequence of events here. So here's a quick example of this. This is from the movie Spider-Man, the original movie Spider-Man from 2002. Here it is. Here's the establishing shot. We're looking outside the building and panning upwards to the apartment, and there is Peter Parker entering the apartment. So we know where he is because we saw an establishing shot from the outside. Okay, quick review. If we want to take anything away from this, here's what it would be. The further we are from the characters, the further the camera is from the characters, the less emotion we're going to be able to see in those characters. So our long shots, our extreme long shots, even our medium long shots are great for conveying action or just depicting the plot, kind of moving the story forward. If we want to emphasize a character's emotions, if we want the audience to feel what the character is feeling, then we need to move the camera closer to them. And of course, if you go on to do film production and you make a movie, if you're changing locations in your story, in your film, use an establishing shot to help let the audience know that you're doing that. Okay. Well, thanks for your time, guys. If you have any questions on any of this stuff, let me know. And I think that's going to conclude it for our lessons for this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about camera angle and camera movement. All right. Have a good one.